Okay, let's dive deep into a really complex relationship, often controversial too, the one between Elon Musk and the Trump administration. We're going to unpack a whole stack of sources today, looking at his time, inside the White House.
Right. And also the huge global expansion of Starlink, his satellite internet service, which was happening around the same time.
Exactly. We've pulled together insights from, well, all sorts of articles, reports, even some online discussions people were having to try and get the full picture.
Yeah, trying to piece it all together.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. Sift through everything, pull out the really important bits, help you understand the key events, the controversies they stirred up.
And crucially, why any of this actually matters to you listening right now.
Right. Because what jumps out right away from the reporting is this kind of paradox, isn't it?
It really is. You've got Musk, this tech billionaire, specifically brought in to find ways to slash government spending drastically. But then at the same time, his own companies, especially Starlink, reportedly got quite a bit of government support. And that whole situation sparked intense debates about ethics, security, global influence. It's a real mix.
It's fascinating. Private enterprise meeting public power. Head on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's unpack it. Starting with Musk's actual role in the administration and that mission to cut spending.
Okay. So the sources, they detail that Musk had this unique position. He wasn't elected.
No.
He was serving as a special government employee. That was the term. Inside the White House structure.
And his main job. Leading this new thing they called the Department of Government Efficiency. Doge, for short.
Right. Doge. And the stated goal, the ambition for Doge was just massive. Find and cut government spending wherever possible.
The initial targets were huge, weren't they? Like trillions?
That's what was reported initially, yeah. Trillions. Later reports, which we found cited in the sources, claimed Doge identified potential savings adding up to about $175 billion.
$175 billion. How do they supposedly find that? Well, the reports mention a few ways. Selling off assets, canceling grants, and a really significant cut to the federal workforce.
How big a cut?
Some accounts mention numbers as high as 260,000 federal jobs targeted for elimination.
Wow. Those are huge numbers. But what the articles we looked at really stress is that nailing down hard evidence for those exact figures or proving Doge's direct role in all of that saving, it's sometimes a bit murky, according to the reports. There's a lack of maybe clear proof.
Exactly. A level of opacity, you could say. And that whole push, for such fast, huge cuts, well, it caused a lot of controversy. The sources definitely highlight that.
Like what?
Well, there were cases where federal judges actually stepped in and stopped mass firings that were apparently linked to these efficiency drives.
Okay.
And the administration itself reportedly had to walk back some decisions sometimes after they ran into problems or unexpected pushback.
So not exactly smooth sailing.
Not at all. Sources even quote Musk himself saying something like, moving that fast, mistakes were bound to happen.
Yeah, I remember reading about one specific mistake they mentioned.
Oh, the Mozambique one.
Yeah. Where his department apparently mixed up a region in Mozambique with Gaza when they were looking at foreign aid programs to cut.
Right. It kind of gives you a sense of the potential for error when you're moving that quickly with such broad strokes.
Definitely. And beyond the cuts themselves, the sources also raised some questions about how Doge operated, didn't they?
They did. There were reports about the department trying to get access to really sensitive Treasury Department systems.
Okay.
And accounts described them developing some kind of AI tool. It was meant to review Veterans Affairs contracts, but some sources called it error-prone. Though, admittedly, details on that AI tool are a bit scarce in the material we saw.
So let's connect this back for people listening. Why does this huge focus on government efficiency, on cutting costs, matter? Especially when it involves these rapid, sometimes controversial methods and bringing in outside figures like Musk?
Well, what are the potential benefits, maybe, of streamlining things? But also, what are the real risks when you try to make changes that big, that fast? You know, impacting public services, federal jobs.
Yeah.
I think what the reporting really highlights is that tension. Applying that sort of disruptive Silicon Valley mindset, move fast, break things to the government.
Which is this huge, complex machine.
Exactly. Deeply embedded, especially when you're talking about vital public services and, established legal ways of doing things. It's a clash.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From the big picture of Doge to something very specific and something that got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
The sources say Elon Musk's Starlink internet service was actually installed at the White House complex.
That's right. And the official reason given by Caroline Leavitt, Trump's press secretary at the time, was pretty simple.
What was it?
Just to improve Wi-Fi connectivity.
Improve Wi-Fi at the White House. But reading through the source material, it's striking how many people immediately question that. Commenters, observers, they just didn't seem to buy it.
Well, yeah. They pointed out that Starlink, its whole purpose really, is for remote places.
Yeah.
Underserved areas where you don't have good internet infrastructure already.
Not exactly the West Wing.
Not exactly. And critics, cited all over the sources, quickly argued that Starlink would probably be less reliable and definitely less secure than the systems already there.
You mean the existing fiber optics, the military-grade stuff they must have?
Precisely. At a place as critical as the White House, you'd expect top-tier secure connections. Starlink just isn't designed for that kind of environment, according to these critics.
So naturally, this led to a lot of security concerns being raised in the reporting.
Huge concerns. Many people saw it as just inappropriate, a major risk.
What kind of risks?
Well, worries that it could be unsecured, easily tapped into. Some called it a cybersecurity nightmare. And some went further, speculating it could even be a potential backdoor. A direct line, maybe, to foreign entities. Russia was mentioned specifically, given other things happening at the time.
And did people draw comparisons to other controversies?
They did. Commenters in the sources brought up past issues around using private email servers for government business. It tapped into that same nerve, the worry about official communications happening outside secure government channels.
And wasn't there some kind of incident related to the installation itself?
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
An employee who was involved in setting up the Starlink, apparently also a Doge employee, interestingly tripped an alarm.
Where?
While getting onto the roof of the Eisenhower Executive Office building right next to the White House. The administration, though, reportedly played it down, said it wasn't a security incident.
So, putting yourself in this position, you think about connectivity at the White House. Obviously crucial.
Mission critical.
But the sources really make you question the security aspect here. What level of security, what redundancy should you expect for government infrastructure at, the highest level?
Exactly. And does that official reason, improving Wi-Fi, really seem plausible when you weigh it against what Starlink actually is and all the serious security concerns detailed in the reporting?
It's definitely a major point of debate in the sources we read.
For sure.
Okay, let's widen the lens again. From that specific White House installation to Starlink's global journey. Because the sources also detail how, while Musk was working inside the administration, the U.S. government reportedly became a very active cheerleader for Starlink overseas.
Yes, this is where things get even more complicated and definitely more controversial, according to the reporting we saw.
How so?
The sources describe the State Department allegedly stepping in directly to help Starlink in several developing nations.
Which countries?
The articles mention places like Gambia, Djibouti, Cameroon, Lesotho, Bangladesh. Specific examples were given.
And what did this stepping in look like? Just standard promotion?
Well, the reporting suggests it went beyond that sometimes. Allegations of lobbying, coaxing, even really pressing foreign governments to fast-track licenses or change regulations just for Starlink.
Right.
They reportedly set up meetings between Starlink executives and foreign leaders, too.
Are there specific examples of this pressure?
Yeah, the articles detailed a couple. In Gambia, the U.S. ambassador reportedly used what was described as a maximum pressure campaign.
Maximum pressure. What does that mean?
It allegedly involved hinting that U.S. aid might be linked to getting Starlink approved and urging Gambia's president to basically go around a minister who is hesitant to push the approval through faster.
Wow. Okay. And what about Lesotho?
In Lesotho, sources reported that Starlink getting its regulatory okay seemed to happen right around the same time as ongoing tariff negotiations between the U.S. and Lesotho. Well, the reporting indicated that officials in Lesotho were apparently hoping that giving Starlink the green light might help them in those talks, maybe get lower U.S. tariffs.
So this level of direct intervention, this pressure for one specific private company,
yeah,
how is that viewed?
By many critics and former officials cited in the sources as an alarming departure from how diplomacy usually works.
Okay.
It raised serious concerns about the appearance of, well, crony capitalism, maybe, or just plain impropriety, especially given Musk was in the government at the time.
That connection is key. But what was the official justification? Did the State Department have a counter-argument?
They did. The sources include their side, too. They reportedly said they were simply promoting an American company on the world stage.
Especially against competitors.
Exactly. Positioning it as competition against systems being pushed by China, for example.
So, for you listening, this really brings up a fundamental question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How should your government support U.S. businesses trying to expand globally?
Where's the line? What's standard diplomatic help, helping companies figure out foreign markets versus what some sources are calling undue pressure?
Or potential conflicts of interest, particularly when the head of the company getting the help also has a role inside that same government.
It's a really fine line, and the reporting suggests it might have been crossed here, at least in the eyes of some observers. It's a critical point raised by the sources.
Yeah. Okay, so let's try and bring these different threads together now. You've got the government role, the huge government contracts these companies have, the global business interests, and then this alleged government support for that global business.
Right.
The central theme, the big concern that keeps popping up across multiple sources, is all about potential conflicts of interest and just blurred lines everywhere.
Absolutely. The reporting consistently hammers this point. Musk being both a special government employee and the head of major companies with massive existing government deals, potentially more to come, huge global ambitions.
It just raised red flags for a lot of people about conflicts of interest.
Widespread alarms, yeah.
And the scale of the existing government business is just huge, isn't it?
Undeniable. The sources point out SpaceX alone holds billions in U.S. government contracts.
How much?
The figure cited was over $20 billion awarded just since 2008.
$20 billion, okay. Now, did Musk or the administration address these conflict concerns?
The articles do mention denials. Musk reportedly denied any conflicts. President Trump apparently said any conflicts would be dealt with if found.
Yeah.
But the reporting also suggested the White House kind of indicated Musk himself was mainly responsible for policing his own potential conflicts.
Self-policing.
Yeah. And there was even a claim reported from Musk suggesting his companies were actually losing money because he was spending time working in government.
Right. So think about this from your perspective, listening in. What does it mean when a private individual, someone with massive business holdings, huge government contracts, holds a powerful, even if unelected, position inside the government?
What kind of transparency, what sort of ethical rules or guidelines would you want to see to make sure government decisions in that kind of situation are absolutely made for the public good?
Yeah, free from any appearance or reality of benefiting a private company.
It really forces you to confront these core questions, doesn't it? About ethics in government, the influence of private wealth, corporate power on public policy, both here and how we act globally. The sources lay that bare.
And just when you think it can't get more complicated, there's another twist. Recent reports detail a very public falling out, basically a feud between Trump and Musk.
Yes. This latest development, it's been widely reported, adds a whole new layer of uncertainty, especially for Starlink's future business around the world and how it's perceived in relation to the U.S. government.
How so?
Well, the sources suggest this public spat could change how foreign governments view Starlink now.
I saw one quote from a former Starlink executive mentioned in the reporting, saying Starlink might not be seen as such a valuable horse anymore, like a bargaining chip in trade talks now that Musk and Trump are apparently, on the outs.
Right. That connection, that perceived political backing might be weakened, and sources are speculating about what that could mean.
Like, will Trump, if he has influence again, still push for Starlink abroad, like he allegedly did before?
Or could Musk's now strained relationship with Trump actually make Musk himself a kind of global liability for the company? Would countries maybe hesitate to tie themselves too closely to a company whose boss is publicly feuding with a major political figure?
There's even some wilder speculation in the sources, isn't there? Acknowledging it's way out there, unprecedented.
Yeah, theoretical stuff. Like, could Trump, if he returned to office, actually try to make life difficult for Starlink? Maybe not overtly, but through things like slow-walking regulatory approvals.
Or even, in the most extreme scenario mentioned, trying to mess with Starlink's actual license to operate its satellites. Though, again, sources stress that's highly unlikely and hasn't happened before.
Still, it's being talked about. But despite all this political drama and potential headwinds, the sources are also pretty consistent on one thing.
What's that?
Starlink still has a massive head start technologically, in terms of satellites actually up there, operating, compared to competitors like Amazon's Project Kuiper or the European and Chinese systems.
Okay, so they still have a big lead.
A significant lead, yeah. And the State Department, generally speaking, still promotes American satellite tech interests globally. That hasn't stopped.
But this feud could have other ripple effects.
Possibly. The sources suggest this public falling out and the uncertainty it creates around Starlink's ties to future U.S. administrations. It might actually push other countries, maybe especially in the EU, to speed up their own plans.
To build their own independent satellite networks.
Exactly. To reduce their reliance on one provider, especially one that seems potentially tied to volatile political relationships.
So for you listening, this latest twist really shows how personal political relationships right at the top can ripple way out, doesn't it?
Absolutely, affecting not just domestic stuff, but global business, the race for critical tech, maybe even your own future access to these kinds of systems, depending on where you live.
Wow. That really covers a lot of ground. Let's just quickly recap the main points from this deep dive.
Okay. We started with Musk in the Trump administration, leading Doge. That ambitious, controversial mission to slash government spending, which faced hurdles and questions about its real impact, according to the sources.
Then we looked at that Starlink installation right at the White House. The official reason better Wi-Fi was widely doubted in the source material because of major security concerns about using that tech in such a sensitive spot.
Right. We also dug into the reporting about the State Department allegedly pushing Starlink hard overseas, using tactics some sources called maximum pressure, maybe linking approvals to trade deals, raising big alarms about potential cronyism, and stepping outside normal diplomatic bounds.
And woven through all of that, the sources kept highlighting those widespread worries about potential conflicts of interest. Musk's government role colliding with his company's huge government contracts and global business. Concerns that were denied, but underscored those really blurred lines.
And finally, this recent public feud between Trump and Musk just adds another layer of complexity, potentially shaking up Starlink's favored status and its global future, even though it still holds a big technological lead for now.
Yeah. The sources we've looked at today, they really paint a stark picture, I think. How deeply technology, private power, and government policy are all tangled up now, globally. It makes you ask some fundamental questions, doesn't it? Like, who actually controls critical infrastructure like global internet? How are these huge decisions with national security and foreign policy implications really being made?
And what's the right balance between, promoting your country's businesses versus upholding ethical standards, transparency, security, especially at the highest levels of government?
So, as you navigate your own information world, maybe think about this. What does this evolving, often messy, relationship between powerful tech companies and governments actually mean for national sovereignty, for global tech competition?
And ultimately, for your own access, your own control in this digital age, definitely something worth thinking about.